Something doesn't quite seem to add up behind the scenes at St. James Park over the past few weeks. It's not something that jumps out immediately, nor an issue that turns into a big, bold headline. On the contrary, it's a quiet, almost uncomfortable feeling that follows supporters with every away match. A small detail here, another there, little frustrations piling up and creating a strange atmosphere, as if Newcastle are always one step away from something bigger, yet unable to cross that invisible line. When the final whistle blows and the scoreline remains unchanged, that unanswered question hangs in the air. Newcastle control matches, impose their rhythm, dominate possession, but leave the pitch with the sense that something essential was missing. It's the kind of frustration only those who follow the team closely can really feel, because it's not about a lack of effort or commitment, but something deeper that seems to block the side in decisive moments. This scenario played out once again on Sunday afternoon at Molineux in the goalless draw against Wolverhampton Wanderers. At first glance, it could be summed up as just another away point, but it carries far more meaning when analyzed calmly. Newcastle looked capable of playing for hours without finding the back of the net, and that feeling didn't come out of nowhere. It had already been building in previous matches. Those who follow the channel know how much these details matter over the course of a season, so this is a good moment to subscribe and not miss any in-depth analysis like this. Here we look beyond the scoreline and try to understand what is really happening with Newcastle. And what we saw in Wolverhampton was almost a mirror of other recent games, where dominance didn't translate into goals or victories. Newcastle are facing a huge problem, valued at around £124 million, that they simply cannot solve in the transfer window. This figure isn't abstract, it represents decisions made, bets placed and expectations created. Against Wolves, it became clear that the team's difficulty isn't only in chance creation, but mainly in finishing moves, something that has proved costly. The impression at Molineux was obvious. Newcastle had the ball, moved it well, pushed Wolves back, but came up against an extremely compact defense. Even so, more aggression was expected in the final third. Crosses flashed across the box, passed dangerously in front of goal, but almost never found a black and white shirt well positioned to finish. That creates frustration not only among supporters, but within the squad itself. This feeling had already surfaced last month at Old Trafford, in the 1-0 defeat to Manchester United. That night, Newcastle also controlled large spells of the game, had more possession and dictated the tempo at various moments, yet they created very few clear-cut chances. Leaving the stadium, the sensation was the same: effort without reward, dominance without effectiveness. Over the course of the season, this has become a worrying pattern. Either Newcastle create plenty of opportunities and fail to finish them, or they struggle enormously to break down well-organized defenses that sit deep and leave little space. Overcoming that kind of obstacle requires creativity, patience and, above all, quality at the decisive moment. And that's exactly where the problem starts to become clear. In the post-match press conference, Howe seemed to be reliving a familiar script: pointed questions, a serious tone, and answers that reveal more than they appear at first glance. The head coach was direct in admitting the team needed to do more in attack. Defensively, according to him, Newcastle performed very well, limiting Wolves' transitions, which were the opponent's main weapon. Howe explained that Wolves dropped deep, defending with many players behind the ball and protecting their goal well. Even so, he expects more from his side in this kind of scenario. Creating chances against a defense with 10 players requires something extra, whether it's a different movement, a set play, or a moment of individual brilliance. Against Wolves, that simply didn't appear. The manager also pointed out that the team did improve offensively as the game went on. The substitutions helped inject fresh energy, and some good opportunities emerged late on. Still, the overall feeling was one of frustration, not because of a lack of attitude or effort, but due to the absence of quality in the final pass and finishing, the elements that decide tight matches like this. Howe also dismissed the idea of physical fatigue, reminding everyone that after games against Manchester City and Bournemouth, the squad looked well prepared physically. For him, the main issue was the way Wolves defended, closing down spaces and forcing Newcastle to find solutions against a defensive wall. And once again, those solutions did not arrive. One point that stood out was the number of dangerous crosses that traveled across the opposition box without anyone there to finish. Howe himself mentioned this, highlighting that many balls flashed across goal, but there weren't enough players attacking those spaces. For a team that has invested heavily in forwards, this detail becomes even more concerning, and this is where names and numbers help illustrate the scale of the problem. It was against Wolves that Nick Woltemade made his Premier League debut in September, scoring the only goal in a 1-0 win. On that day, he showed confidence, presence in the box, and a natural eye for goal, qualities that immediately excited supporters. Signed for a club record fee of £69 million from Stuttgart, Woltemade waited 15 days to make his debut, but made an instant impact. The headed goal from a Jacob Murphy cross felt like the start of an inspiring journey on time inside. There was a sense that Newcastle had found a striker capable of deciding difficult matches. However, that confidence shown on debut seems to have faded as the weeks have gone by. Against Wolves, Walter missed similar chances in the first half, particularly from aerial situations. Despite having already scored 9 goals this season, a respectable tally for his first experience in English football, the striker is going through a worrying dry spell. He has now gone 7 games without scoring, and that weighs heavily on both the player and the team. When he was substituted, Wissa came on but added very little. The forward hasn't scored since the turn of the year and failed to reach a dangerous Harvey Barnes cross, symbolizing the lack of precision and attacking presence. This situation becomes even more serious when the level of investment is considered. Combined, the signings of Walter and Wissa cost Newcastle around £124 million in the last transfer window. It's a huge sum, naturally creating expectations of an immediate return in the form of goals and victories. Alan Shearer, the club's all-time leading goalscorer and a voice always respected by supporters, did not hide his frustration. He lamented the lack of Newcastle players attacking crosses and described the offensive performance as well below expectations. Coming from someone who knows the centre-forward role better than almost anyone, that criticism carries extra weight. The problem is that, even while recognizing this deficiency, Newcastle appeared to have their hands tied. Asked about the possibility of resolving the issue in the transfer market, Eddie Howe was direct and honest. According to him, the club does not have the financial capacity to make new investments at this moment, a statement that immediately raises alarm bells. This means the solution has to come from within. Tactical adjustments, individual improvement, and better use of the chances created will be crucial. With a tough run of fixtures ahead, across all 4 competitions the club is involved in, Newcastle cannot afford to keep wasting clear opportunities. It's worth remembering that in football, if you don't score goals, you don't win matches, and Newcastle's window to turn good performances into concrete results is shrinking with each round. Every goalless draw, every narrow defeat, increases the pressure on players and coaching staff.